Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Compass. Once again tonight, there are no new cases of COVID-19 in this province, and now there are concrete measures starting to take shape on how restrictions might be eased up. That could begin as early as May 1st. Nicole Williams joins me live in studio tonight with more. So Nicole, what could easing up look like in just 10 days from now?
Well, Louise, this is all going to be done in phases. Included in the first phase will be allowing some outdoor activities. The province didn't say which ones, and rescheduling some elective surgeries that may have had to be put on hold. We didn't get too many more details than that because these plans are still under development. But what we do know is that for any of these restrictions to be eased up on May 1st, some things will have to continue. People will still need to continue to physically distance themselves from one another. There will still be screening measures at the Charlottetown Airport and the Confederation Bridge. And if there's any kind of widespread transmission or outbreak at a long-term care facility, there won't be any easing back.
So keep doing what people are doing for that to happen, I guess, is the message there. So what is the province doing to prepare for May 1st?
Well, right now it's looking at what activities could be done in a safe way. And it's reaching out to different communities and organizations to see what plans they have in place to make sure that people are kept safe. Dr. Morrison says recreational fishing, for example, is one of those activities that they're looking at. And right now the province is considering what risks there might be if it goes ahead. So those preparations, she says, are a slow process. Take a listen.
This is going to be rough. It is going to be bumpy, and there's no perfect way to do this. And I will be asking not only for your patience in the last few weeks, but we'll continue to do so. If we don't do this well, then the possibility of having increased measures lifted by the summer will not happen.
Now, those first measures will likely be in place for about 2 weeks and then evaluated. And after that, the province will take a look at what measures could be lifted after that.
Do we know what some of those measures are that are in second and third phase?
Right. So Dr. Morrison says businesses small enough to maintain physical distancing could be reopened. That's part of that sort of next idea. But restrictions on large gatherings will still be in place for a while yet. Same with the screening measures at PEI's borders. The biggest risk is still people coming here from off island, and lifting those restrictions will depend on what's happening in the rest of the country. Here's Premier Dennis King.
It's premature to say that the bridge will open to free traffic on such and such a date. We're not in a position to do that. We have to err on the side of health and safety here. But I think that, at least for today, April 21st gives me a flicker of hope that, there is some positive news on the horizon.
Now, Premier Dennis King says he has spoken with the Premier of New Brunswick about the possibility of travel between the two provinces this summer, but that's still just a possibility and well into the future. But the bottom line is for the next 10 days or so, Islanders are being asked to keep following current measures, and if all goes well, we could see some changes come May 1st.
Thank you, Nicole. That's Nicole Williams reporting live in studio tonight. There was no further update today on schools and whether classes will be canceled for the rest of this school year. Some other provinces have done that, New Brunswick, for example. The Premier says the decision is a challenging one, but that large gatherings would be one of the last things allowed under ease-back measures. The results are in from the fishermen's vote on when to start lobster season. They had a choice of 2 dates, and there was a different result in each part of the island. Brian Higgins reports.
For island fishermen this year, when you start fishing could depend on where you fish.
Boats are going into the water today in North Rustico, as they have been in various places around the island for weeks now. But the normal April 30th start date won't be happening due to COVID-19. This weekend, the Fishermen's Association held a vote to see when the delayed start would begin. The choices were May 6th or May 13th, and the results are now in. In LFA 24, along the entire North Shore and around eastern PEI, fishermen voted about 60% in favour of May 6. In LFA 26A on the Northumberland Strait, a tighter result, 51% in favour of the later date. The Fishermen's Association says it will now recommend to Ottawa both those dates, May 6th and May 13th, to be the start dates in each of the two zones, respectively.
It's related to a lot on their local situation with their buyer and the plant that they sell to. These are big dynamics, and that's why I think we're seeing some of those variances in date.
Health officials said today they'll be providing advice and support to people who work on boats and on wharfs and in fish plants this year. The Fishermen's Association says protective measures could include use of face masks and face visors on boats, but details are still being worked out. Brian Higgins, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Oyster, quahog, and clam harvesters are asking for a 2-week delay to the start of their season. It was supposed to open May 1st. The PEI Shellfish Association has asked for that to be pushed to May 15th. 95% of those who voted wanted the delay. They harvest wild shellfish and don't have storage to hold their product if it is not sold right away. The request has gone to the federal fisheries minister. Fishermen here say they hope to hear back by the end of the week. A Charlottetown company has joined the fight against COVID-19. It's helping to develop a rapid test for the virus, and the process might surprise you. Travis Kingdon has that story.
COVID-19 virus has spikes on it. It's how the virus infects humans. And back in February, Affinity Immuno got a synthetic version of those spikes, and they're now injecting them into chickens to help develop a rapid test for COVID-19. After the company puts those spikes into chickens, the animals create antibodies to fight them. Then the company pulls those antibodies out of the eggs here in the Charlottetown lab and gives them to an international group of companies who are working on developing a rapid test for the virus for humans.
It would take some mucus or fluid from basically the very back of the throat, and you know, it would kind of look a little bit like a pregnancy test, except you're putting nasopharyngeal swab fluid in there. As it stands now, one line would indicate that it's negative for coronavirus or COVID-19, and 2 lines would indicate that it's positive.
Chicken antibodies react to the virus in the sample, allowing the test to give the positive or negative reading, and the company says these results could come in 5 to 10 minutes. Now, Zucolo says before a test like this can make it to the market, it needs to be approved by Health Canada. In the meantime, the company is going to continue to add hens to its flock so it can create more antibodies to help the fight against COVID-19. Travis Kingdon, CBC News, Charlottetown.
The city of Summerside is setting up a task force to support businesses affected by COVID-19. It sent out a survey, and every business said it is facing challenges, and the losses are substantial.
Clients have had to shut their door, reducing service, prospective clients not being able to get into the business to do business. They didn't have the capability to do electronic business, that type of thing. You know, people are saying, you know, their billable hours are about 50% less than what they normally would be for this time of year.
The task force will include the Summerside Chamber of Commerce and Downtown Summerside, Inc. The new group hopes to meet soon to begin working on some initiatives.
Well, the sunshine was lovely today. Stunning blue skies across the island, fairly light winds, and in some areas, not all, temperatures were even milder than expected. That being said, all good things must come to an end. An approaching frontal system will see clouds increase overnight. We have some rain and some gusty south to southeast winds on tap to start your Wednesday. I'll have the full details just ahead.
As you heard earlier tonight, PEI could begin phase 1 of easing back on some public health measures starting May 1st. But what exactly will that look like? With more, Dr. Heather Morrison is my guest via FaceTime this evening. So, Dr. Morrison, let's go through these phases. What could phase 1 potentially look like? Where do you start here?
The 2 areas that we'd be looking at in this phase 1 would be around our elective healthcare surgeries, for instance. And we know that people have had surgeries which have been elective surgeries that have been on hold for a number of weeks. We procedures that have had to wait, and I think it's really important because we want to look after the health of Islanders, COVID and non-COVID. So I think that's one area. The other area where we are looking at easing up some of these measures would be in outdoor activities. So recognizing that the risk may be lower in certain circumstances when we're outside and not in enclosed spaces. Having said that, our public health emergency order, it continues. The public health order continues. So it's doing so, still keeping in mind the mass gathering of no more than 5 people has to be in place. The importance, of course, of physical distancing, and it will allow some things to start taking place, and we'll be reviewing that as we go forward. So I think it gives people hope. We talked about that earlier today, and but we do so carefully, not wanting this to change the state of our COVID-19 and the state of the pandemic here in Prince Edward Island. And we are anxious to make this step, but yet we want to be very careful and keep everyone healthy at the same time. So it is a real balance.
So does that mean really it's too early to even look at what potentially phase 2 and phase 3 might look like going forward?
Well, I think when we look ahead, and we've talked about doing it in increments too, we want a certain period of time in between relaxing certain measures so that we can make sure that everyone stays safe for those that next period of time. But when we start looking at really the next phase, it would be around businesses, for instance, that are able to maintain physical distance, and maybe looking at how those businesses continue to function with some virtual element or online element, as well as minimizing how many people may be able to be in their store at the same time.
Is there any sense of when physical distancing rules would be able to loosen so that families and friends could visit each other?
You know, I think, Liz, that is a really good question, because I think there may be somewhere in between that happens first, so that we may be able to, in certain circumstances, not today, not yet, but move to where we can see our friends and family, but maintain physical distance. And I think even that will mean a lot to people, and it will give huge comfort to be able to at least sit in the same room, and which we have really not done in a long time, and we haven't seen people we really care about. And so I think we need to get there, and that will be also one part of the conversation in the weeks ahead.
Is it a fair assumption to think that the border would be the last phase of easing up, you know, the restrictions at the bridge, the ferry, and at the airport?
I think the restrictions in terms of interprovincial travel, our mass gatherings, our visitor restrictions on long-term care, I think those 3 things will not be in the phase 1 or phase 2 as we go forward. But we'll continue to look at what those mean and what, and there could be changes to what it means in terms of interprovincial travel, but it'll also depend on what's happening in other parts of the country and in our neighboring provinces. So we'll continue to watch that, but those areas will not be in phase 1, that's for sure.
Dr. Heather Morrison, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
These are the faces of those whose lives were taken by the gunman in Nova Scotia. The RCMP believe he knew some of them, but not all of them. Today, police announced the number of victims has grown again. It is now at least 22. Investigators are searching for clues from 16 different crime scenes, and families and communities are left with questions as they grieve in isolation. Simon Dingley reports.
Saying farewell. Jolene Oliver, Aaron Tuck, and their daughter Emily's images are now stuck on a pole on a road. But this isn't just any road. The gunman lived here. His rampage began here. Among his victims, teacher Lisa McCulley. McCulley's sister is baffled a neighbor her sister trusted could have committed one of the deadliest mass killings in Canadian history.
He was always very helpful. They were acquaintances, so he would help her if she had any issues, and he was always very generous.
I guess this individual had a number of properties in Portapique. What was the relationship with neighbors? What about the relationship that he had with the people that he approached on Saturday night?
Little is publicly known about the gunman who was shot and killed by police Sunday morning. He owned this denture-fitting business in Dartmouth, and he left no note.
A lot of people are asking why this senseless act. Looking at the gunman, the RCMP will obviously take a deep dive into his online history.
Military vehicles were seen traveling down Portapique Beach Road today, an area where the suspect had multiple homes. An excavator was also spotted. They're typically used to dig up properties. The RCMP confirmed they will also be searching his properties. The Mounties say he was driving a very real look-alike RCMP vehicle, and they confirm he was wearing an authentic RCMP uniform. They did not say where it came from. At this point, there are far more questions than answers, and it may take months to piece together why he did it. Simon Dingley, CBC News.
Premier Dennis King said today he has spoken with the Premier of Nova Scotia and offered condolences on behalf of all Islanders.
I know as Maritimers and Canadians we're hurting. I know also that we're tough and we're resilient. Somehow we need to try to find a way forward to keep going. I have offered any help and support to Premier McNeil and his province in the days ahead. He is appreciative of the gesture and tells me that for now the best thing we can do is to be strong, to hold our loved ones close, and to be grateful for all we have.
Time for a short break. As we go to break, a live look outside our studio in Charlottetown this evening. Jay Scotland's full weather forecast is coming up right after this. Stay with us.
I'm Mitch Cormier. Coming up Wednesday on Island Morning, the island's oyster industry came to a full stop at the start of the COVID-19 crisis. Now producers are getting a little bit of that market back and finding new ways to sell you oysters. Tell you how on the next Island Morning.
Time to check in with Jay Scotland and his backyard weather bureau, and an abundance of sunshine in that bureau today, Jay.
Yes, a lot of free vitamin D courtesy of Mother Nature today. And actually, for some parts of the island, Louise, it was a little bit warmer than I was forecasting. The funny thing is, when that happens, I tend not to get too many complaints in my inbox when it's warmer than expected. Not everywhere was very mild, though. Let's take a look at temperatures this hour across the island. And you see the marine influence as you get to those more exposed coastal stations up in the North Cape. As we look to the other tip at East Point, temperatures topped out around 3 degrees this afternoon, sitting at 2 degrees on the plus side now, and 9 degrees. Wow, you've actually bumped up in the last hour at Sleman Park and Summerside, the more inland weather stations. Obviously a bit warmer with that daytime heating from the sun today. 7 now at Charlottetown Airport. It was 8 degrees earlier today. Clear conditions across the island. We have to take a very wide look at our satellite and radar shot. And actually, we're missing some of the imagery there, but you can kind of see it flickering off to our west. That rain is a frontal system that is approaching. Now, the low itself, very powerful. That's going to stay well to our north and west, but it's going to drive that cold front across the island, and we'll see clouds increasing through the overnight hours tonight ahead of some wet weather, some steady rain, about 5 millimeters possible tomorrow morning. Also, some very strong south to southeast winds gusting from 40 to over 70 kilometers per hour. Now, as we get into the afternoon, the rain should become scattered. We'll see breaks of sunshine, a mix of sun and cloud. The winds will become more southwest and westerly and ease a bit, still gusting to near 50 kilometers per hour. And then as we get into Wednesday evening, some isolated flurries will be possible before clearing up into Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, though, we will look for some cloud cover to return. Temperatures will be cooler, and there's a very slight risk of a few scattered flurries as we get into the second half of your Thursday. As for the overnight hours tonight, temperatures will be pretty mild once we get past midnight over western PEI. Strong southeast winds. We'll see those temperatures up around +1. You'll see afternoon temperatures a bit below seasonal tomorrow with more of a westerly wind. Isolated showers possible and temperatures between 5 and 6 degrees. Central, eastern areas, similar story. Temperatures down to around the freezing mark tonight. We will watch for clouds to increase with the rain arriving by early morning. The strongest of the winds through the morning as well. And then brisk southwest to westerly winds in the afternoon. Isolated showers and temperatures between 5 and 7 degrees. And as we get into the early evening, there is even the risk of some wet flurry activity as well. Thursday, much cooler, still windy, just not as windy as those gusts for your Wednesday morning. And then temperatures will return to seasonal values and conditions will improve when it counts as we get into your weekend forecast. Louise?
Thank you very much, Jay. We'll see you again tomorrow. And here is a stunning photo of the day today. This was sent in to us by Chris Marshall. I took this in Cornwall. Gorgeous there. The sun peeking through the clouds at sunset, I believe. That is a beautiful picture, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I saw the sunset the other night. It was gorgeous. You know, we love to put your photos on Compass. Send them to us by email, or you can tag us on social media. And how about this as we go to break? This little fella enjoying himself on the Charlottetown boardwalk. Lindsay McEwen put this video on Instagram. Looks like he's enjoying the sunshine and really the lack of people checking things out down at Peaks Key. Pretty cute there. We'll be back with more Compass after this break. Stay with us. Hundreds of people in Nova Scotia have set up memorials on their front steps and porches, candlelight vigils to mourn victims of the mass shooting there. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, larger public gatherings cannot happen. A virtual memorial for the victims is planned for Friday. Thank you for joining us tonight for Compass. You can log on to cbc.ca/PEI for more news from our province 24 hours a day. And there is more coverage from Nova Scotia all evening on CBC News Network and tonight on the National as well. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night, PEI.